Hey, welcome to Passive Play. So today I'll be reviewing Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire, Season 1, Episode 1, titled "In Thrones of Increasing Wonder" on AMC+, and I also believe the channel AMC, starting actually today, coming out later tonight. Um, so we basically start off with Daniel Malloy. He's an investigative reporter. He receives a package of old interview tapes from the 70s that he did, and a letter from Louis DuPont Dunlop requesting that they kind of refinish retelling his vampire life story. They both meet up again and realize that the interview in 1973, was lacking in truth and accuracy and kind of authenticity from both of them. And they both want a redo of the interview, as now they're both older and wiser now. Um, and they feel that they would do a better job of actually telling the story. And so the first question that Daniel asks Louis is, how long have you been dead? And then we go back now. We go back to 1910 New Orleans, when Louis was human, and the executor in charge of his family's trust and estate. His father died 5 years ago, and Louis, basically, he's a businessman and a pimp. He owns like sport lodges where it's alcohol and booze and prostitutes. um, and his father didn't necessarily have that kind of business, but when his father died, Louis had to find a way to take care of him, his brother, his sister, and his mom. And, he kind of, that's basic, that's just kind of the business that he started doing. His family, they do know how he makes the money, but, they're living pretty good, considering that they're African American in that time. The particular area that they're in, it's more, I guess, hospitable. To be African American in that particular area. I mean, it's still dangerous, but apparently it's not as dangerous because they're living pretty good. They got their own maids and everything. But yeah, so they may not prefer the way that he makes his money, but that's how he's taking care of them, and they're they living in a house. And there's also this scene too where um, Louis' brother Paul comes down to one of his sporting houses, and he tries to I don't want to say save a hoe, but it's kind of, he's trying to save the prostitute, tell her to find Jesus and repent her sins, and got the Bible in his hand, and she like, get away from me. um that's funny. But you know so anyway, he's a businessman, but he's basically a pimp. And he has to carry himself in a certain kind of way to protect his businesses, and as well, to you just can't have people running up on him. And then so Louis meets Lestat for the first time at basically a whorehouse that isn't owned or run by him, but by another business owner lady, Madam, and his like favorite prostitute, Lily, that he prefers to sleep with. Um, she is in the company of Lestat, and basically they're just kind of throwing money down to get to spend the night with her, and then Lestat ends up out paying Louis. And Louis is kind of angry. He said he feels like emasculated, but he also kind of is intrigued by Lestat as well in their first encounter. And then it shows that Louis and Lestat, they meet again at this like private cards game where Lestat kind of starts getting inside Louis's brain. When one of the like politicians of the area says that they just got their own property of a sporting house, and they want Louis' help to manage it, but they'll only give him 10 or 15%. They call him a Negro and all that stuff. Um, and Lestat gets inside Louis' head and saying, um, you know, they're trying to, they treat you less than, um, you know, and he asks Louis, does he know his own value? And and he also like freezes the people in that like game, in that cards game setting that they're in. And Louis doesn't really understand how he's doing it. But he also ends up helping Louis win the game by taking out one of the other players' Joker card, and having Louis give him like a numbers card and giving it back to the other player. So and then Lestat ends up unfreezing the cards game, but and Louis ends up winning. So and then from that moment, Louis and Lestat, they kind of start talking. Louis becomes closer to Lestat in the sense that he's becoming more familiar with him. He kind of sees him as a confidant in terms of like the way he would talk to his brother. And he doesn't really realize that Lestat is like slowly seducing him. At the end of the day, Lestat is a predator. That's just his nature. And even in the show, Louis says he doesn't necessarily realize that he's being seduced and hunted, but this is what's going on because Lestat had already been watching, Louis. He just basically made an introduction. So he had already been watching, probably where he was going, the places he was frequently visiting. So he's just basically inserting himself, into Louis' line of sight so he could kind of get an in. And, by Lestat being quote unquote new to the New Orleans area, he's, asking Louis to show him around. He's Louis helping him like kind of how to dress in the more, current style of clothing during that time. And so they kind of, build a relationship there. And there's a scene where Louis' sister says, she hears that he's been seen with a white man, and then Louis says, "Well, he's French, and different." And his sister says, "French white, is that a new kind of white?" And she basically wants Louis to bring, Lestat to meet his family, and and his brother. I was gonna say too, Louis' brother Paul. I mean, I don't know. I mean, in the show, they just say like he believes that God is speaking to him through these like birds that he hears or sees in his mind. And they, I guess he could kind of be like special needs to an extent, but they act like he's slow, but he actually is quite, I would say, inquisitive. He seems actually quite, I mean, he's off, but it's not like he's stupid. It's like he goes with his instincts and whatnot. So I was going to say that too, and he kind of questions Lestat's, validity or who he is. He questions if Lestat is good or bad. Well, actually, he basically believes that Lestat is bad for Louis, and he kind of tells Louis to stay away from Lestat. But Louis kind of disregards it at first, and either way, Lestat does end up meeting Louis' family, and there's an interesting scene with Lestat and Paul's brother too. Um, and then after that, we go to Lestat. Lestat ends up getting Lily to his place, and he uses Lily to basically seduce. Now this time to seduce Louis into basically a threesome, but then he ends up making Lily go to sleep because he's like, no ho, he's mine. And so he uses Lily to seduce. Lestat uses Lily to seduce Louis, and they end up like kissing, and then he ends up like sucking Louis's blood, and then he's like they're like levitating off the floor. And then the next day when Louis is kind of like enthralled with that and like the intimacy of that experience, but in the show he talks about how you can't be a openly gay black man during that time, and basically think that you're going to survive or make it. So after that, Louis just basically ignores Lestat. He doesn't go anywhere near where Lestat, I guess, lives. He just kind of avoids them. And then after Louis' sister's wedding, his brother Paul ends up like jumping off of the house and killing himself, committing suicide basically. And upon the funeral, when they're walking down like the street, Lestat tries to talk to Louis. He offers his condolences, but he basically tells him that his brother was basically already kind of gone anyway. And Louis kind of takes that personally and like pushes off Lestat and says, get away from me. I don't want to talk about this here. And Lestat keeps like sending these I don't know, subliminal. He's in Louis' mind saying, come to me, come to me, come to me. And also Louis' mom is kind of she's kind of taking out her anger on Louis, making it, saying, that he's responsible for Paul dying. Why were they on top, why were they on top of the house, and, climbing up on the roof and all that, which it seemed like something they probably were doing since they were kids. But anyway, she's hurt that she just lost her son, and she's kind of just taking it out on Louis. But of course, Louis is taking it to heart, and he feels really guilty. But he had no idea that Paul was going to do that. And apparently, like I said, I think they have been doing it since they were kids, and he had been this way, I think, for the longest. So, the fact that he never did it before, and the fact that he did it now, I don't know if maybe in the later episode you'll find out that maybe Lestat was the one that told Paul to do it or put something in Paul's head. Who knows? But anyway, so basically after the funeral, and with Lestat kind of subliminally, putting in Louis' mind, to come to him, Louis doesn't end up going to the service after the funeral, because he feels guilty, and the way his mom is kind of treating him, he ends up just drinking, and Lestat is still calling to him, and he ends up running to the church and trying to repent to the priest, letting him know all his sins, asking God to forgive him and also to take his life and to kill him. And, basically he's just kind of laying out all his sins. And while Lestat is saying his sins to the priest, Lestat shows up, and he like kills the priest, breaks the I don't know, the thing that they're in, between the priest and Louis. He ends up like ripping it kind of almost in half a little bit, and he kills the priest. And Louis, kind of a little bit is horrified as he sees that Lestat is like sucking the blood out of the priest, and he like stabs Lestat with his like knife cane thing, and it doesn't kill him. And then Lestat like throws Louis across the floor, and then another priest comes out. He sees what's going on, and he tries to run for the door, and Lestat beats him to the door, and he like punches his fist from the back end of the skull to the front of the face of the priest. It was kind of cool. It was messed up, but it was kind of cool. As far as like an action scene, that part was like probably the coolest part, that one part. And then two, and I don't even really remember this in the movie. I didn't remember, did Lestat have all these powers? Because he has like telepathy. He can kind of fly. He can, mind control, read your mind. Um, yeah, he's got a lot of stuff going. Yeah, super speed, super strength, but yeah, it's like he has like powers. Like he can levitate, maybe fly. He can, yeah, again, telepathy. He can move things with his mind. So it's just, I don't know if he had all these powers. I don't remember that in the movie. It's been so long since I saw that movie. But yeah, anyway, in this show, he has like some cool powers. So he's a very cool vampire in that sense. Yeah, so after he kills the second priest, Louis is like still on the floor, kind of like horrified about what he's watching. And Lestat kind of walks towards him, and he kind of lets Louis, he's like, I see you for who you are, and the different hats you have to wear in society, and all the anger you carry, for how people try to treat you and how they look up, look down at you. He's like, I love you. I want you to be my companion. You know, and say yes to becoming like Lestat. And he tells us that you just have to shake your head, and Louis does, and then Lestat bites him, and then um, Louis feeds on Lestat, and then he becomes a vampire, and then that's basically where it ends. And I will say too, Lestat thinks very highly of Louis, maybe even more so than Louis thinks of himself. He does have this kind of thing that he's carrying around, like a self-deprivation of what he has had to do to take care of his family, but he feels that it's his duty, and he's doing what he has to do. But it was very interesting to kind of see how this really played out. And yes, they have race bended Louis' character from the 1994 film Interview with the Vampire, and that was originally played by Brad Pitt, and it leans more into the intimate and like sexuality of Lestat and Louis relationship. That was actually more in the book, but they downplayed it in the original film, and at that time, people had kind of said that they didn't really showcase it in the film, like it was kind of more subtext in the book. So the TV show plays more like kind of how it actually was in the book. I had initially found the film boring, honestly, but the show, at least to me, is really engaging. Like from it starts off really good. It's engaging throughout. You like all the characters are cool. Um, the story, the backdrop, like to me, it's very quick too. It's a quick pace. It gets right into the story. So um honestly, I can't wait to see the second episode. But this is really good. It's working on, to me, on all cylinders. The characters, the script, the dialogue, the acting, the production, the design, the look, how they have them dressed up in that time. Everything is working for this show. I am really liking this show. So the first episode is really good. If you plan to see it, I would say give it a watch. Yeah, I would say give it a watch. It's really good. So that's all I can tell you. I can just give you my honest opinion, but it's really good. It's better than I thought it was gonna be. So yeah, this is really good. But if you like this review, hit the like button. If you have any comments, put comments below. Some of you have been commenting, so thanks for that. I've answered most of them. I'll try to get to the ones I haven't answered, but and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And again, I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers, hopefully by the end of the year. So please subscribe. Other than that, I'll see you on the next review or recap. Out.